Okay, so we can see some people are starting to arrive virtually as much as that can be. So we'll just give it maybe another 30 seconds or so everybody can, I want to say take their seats, but probably already sat down, at least enter the webinar, and then we'll get started. Fantastic. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Okay, fantastic. Let's get started. So hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing very, very well, and welcome to today's joint webinar. I'm Nathan from the European Pain Federation, EFIC, and we are joined by colleagues from the Europe region of World Physiotherapy today to discuss the role of movement in preventing and managing pain in office workers and remote employees. We have some fantastic panel members today who will be able to, or who you will be able to hear from shortly. And I'm going to pass it over to both Jonas and Miguel, who you can see on your screens likely. Throughout this webinar, we have different sort of presentations, and we're really excited and feel super privileged to have them with us today to share some information about both the On the Move campaign and the Move at Work campaign, two very, very interesting initiatives. I'm sure you will all agree. So before we get started, you can see the plan there on screen. Please feel free to have a look at that. But a little housekeeping before we do that. As like all of our live webinars, there's a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You can just see it if you look a little bit down. Please use this to ask questions throughout the presentations and the discussions. It's a great opportunity to interact with our panelists, our panel members, so please get involved. We will do our best to get to all of the questions and give you a chance to obviously interact with the content today. You can also do this anonymously, which is usually the approach that I sometimes take. So you can do this anonymously as well if you would prefer that. And I mentioned we will have a look at the questions towards the end once we've had some fantastic presentations. If we have any materials or resources to share, we will post them in the chat. You can see the chat below. The chat will be for general discussion or any kind of general comments that you would like to make. Please get involved. We do love to see it. Because it's recorded, this webinar will be accessible at a later time if you wish to do so via the EFIC online academy and the online resources from our partners today, of course, their YouTube channel, Europe Region of World Physiotherapy. So please have a look at that as well. Housekeeping completed. Let's get started, shall we? So I'm now going to hand it over to Jonas for a very, very quick introduction and to take it away on our first presentation. Good morning or good afternoon, Jonas. Welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for the introduction, and also thank you for providing us with the possibility to talk about our task force and our recent progressions and achievements. Now, EFIC On the Move is a dedicated task force that promotes physical activity as a fundamental strategy for pain prevention and management. And the initiative raises awareness of how movement can reduce musculoskeletal and chronic pain, encouraging active lifestyles for improved well-being. The group consists of a multidisciplinary network, including pain researchers, healthcare professionals, and patient organizations across Europe, working together to integrate movement-based approaches into pain care. Within this task force, a working group of researchers, currently led by Paul Cameron, is primarily involved to discuss initiatives and create material. Now, to achieve its vision, this On the Move campaign has a clear call to action. First, our goal is to engage healthcare professionals, policymakers, and the public in recognizing movement as a crucial component of pain management. Second, we advocate for policies that effectively incorporate physical activity into pain treatment guidelines. And third, we encourage participation in awareness campaigns, both nationally and globally. The milestones of this young task force include its official launch in 2023, the development of educational materials in 24, which you can now already find at the forefront of the EFIC site, but also in our recent position paper that I will talk about later, and integration into EFIC conferences with dedicated sessions and workshops. Future efforts now focus on expanding research, doing advocacy, and community engagement. So let me now tell you a bit more about the rationale and the content of this On the Move campaign. To start with, just some key facts on physical activity. It is already very clear and scientifically supported that regular physical activity provides multiple health benefits, including reducing the risk of many major diseases, such as multiple forms of cancers, cardiovascular diseases, and diabetes, while also improving mental health. And when looking at development of chronic pain in general, being active can be a preventive factor in adults as well as in younger and older persons. It also plays a crucial role in pain prevention, as it lowers the risk of developing disorders such as chronic low back pain and osteoarthritis. Furthermore, increasing your physical activity level and being engaged in more vigorous activity seems to lower the risk even more. So all in all, this is very important for both individuals at risk and also our society as a whole, as currently chronic pain affects up to 30% of all Europeans, this way leading to significant healthcare costs and low productivity. Encouraging movement could thus be essential for mitigating such negative impacts. So therefore, in recent months, we have developed several initiatives to enhance awareness and education on the role of physical activity or movement in general in pain management. These include, firstly, our position paper, outlining scientific evidence and expert recommendations to support healthcare providers in actually delivering meaningful physical activity. Secondly, we recently composed a Mythbuster series addressing common misconceptions about movement and pain that will be communicated with a broad audience. And thirdly, we are currently evaluating how we can provide some practical tips to integrate physical activity into daily work routines. And I will now shortly discuss all these initiatives with you. So let me start with the position paper. For your information, this paper is published open access in the European Journal of Pain, and it is thus freely available for everyone. I'll share the link to it in the chat after my talk. And in this paper, we first show an overview of the proven benefits of physical activity. But then we also discuss that despite its benefits, major challenges still exist, as pain is often a major barrier to physical activity. In fact, many individuals with chronic pain avoid movement due to the fear of exacerbation. And this fear avoidance cycle can lead to further deconditioning and increased pain sensitivity. Breaking this cycle is thus crucial to unlocking the benefits of movement for pain management. And it should be clear that healthcare providers have a big responsibility to support such patients in their attempts to be more physically active. So therefore, we have constructed 5 key recommendations for all healthcare providers to assess, advise, and support individuals living with chronic pain in adopting and sustaining physically active lifestyles. You can see these recommendations combined in the current visual. I will discuss each recommendation separately with you in the next slides. To start with, recommendation 1 is to always take a physical activity and put physical activity on the agenda during care management. Healthcare providers should assess a patient's readiness to engage in physical activity and identify potential barriers. Common obstacles that can be evaluated include time constraints, lack of motivation, environmental factors, and limited support systems. However, chronic pain patients often face additional barriers, such as fatigue, deconditioning, and psychological concerns such as lacking self-confidence or having maladaptive beliefs, potentially due to knowledge gaps. A holistic approach is necessary to address these challenges effectively, trying to solve such issues with all professionals involved. Our second recommendation is to advise that physical activity is safe. Indeed, it is imperative to emphasize that physical activity is a well-supported intervention for chronic pain, as some patients might have a lot of doubts surrounding the value of being physically active. Patients should be reassured that movement is safe, and fear-inducing language should be avoided. Instead, Healthcare professionals should use positive messaging that frames physical activity as a long-term solution rather than an immediate pain relief. Recommendation 3 is to deliver a brief physical activity intervention and support the patient or client in becoming more active. Brief intervention can already be highly effective in encouraging individuals to become more active. They can consist of multiple modalities, such as advice on optimizing personal context to be active, discussions on short or long-term goals, negotiations on strategies to reach an active lifestyle, or simply some words of encouragement and positive feedback. These interventions don't even have to be long and may include motivational interviewing techniques, behavioral support, and referrals to additional resources. Such discussions, even if they only last a couple of minutes, can significantly impact a patient's willingness to engage in movement-based activities. Recommendation 4 is to discuss acceptable levels of discomfort of both physical activity soreness and pain. It is crucial that patients know that pain does not always equal damage, and that they should be able to differentiate between normal exercise induced discomfort and harmful pain. Patients should be informed that mild pain flares and delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS, are normal responses to physical activity. By setting personal pain limits and progressing gradually, individuals can engage in safe and effective movement strategies, also preventing discouragement. And if a certain activity doesn't go as well as expected, you can always try another one. Recommendation 5 is to support long-term activity engagement. Sustained physical activity is essential for long-term pain management. Healthcare professionals should integrate discussions about movement into regular checkups, helping patients set realistic goals and adjusting their activities as needed. Encouraging persistence and reinforcing the long-term benefits of physical activity can enhance the adherence. And for all those caregivers attending today, don't forget, a healthcare provider should lead by example. As we already know that healthcare providers that are physically active themselves effectively inspire and support their patients better. So let's just make sure to look in the mirror from time to time and also assess our own actions. To support healthcare providers even more in taking up these recommendations, the paper further provides a table with an overview of multiple sources and online links to them. So if you think this would be of value to you, don't hesitate to check that table out and try out the links that we have provided. So to summarize, this ethic position paper advocates for the prioritization of physical activity in healthcare systems and provides an important overview with key recommendations. We, as this task force, believe that policymakers and media and society should focus on promoting movement as a primary intervention for chronic pain, rather than emphasizing interventions with fewer benefits and more potential harm. As a second part of this webinar, I would like to display some of the myths that we would like to bust related to promoting physical activity and movement in the workplace. Our task force believes this is an important thing to do, as this can support educating patients and an even broader general audience, which in turn enables these individuals to make better informed decisions and take up positive attitudes towards physical activity. As such, they don't get discouraged when making changes in their own context related to potentially being active. The first myth is the role of posture. A common misconception is that good posture, following anatomical standards, and use of ergonomic furniture supporting such posture prevents all pain. However, up until now, literature shows us that there is no single perfect posture. Instead, movement variability seems to be the key. Regularly changing positions and incorporating movement breaks throughout the day are more beneficial than maintaining a static posture, even if it seems anatomically correct. The second myth is actually a bit related to the first one, but still, that standing desks are a solution for chronic pain. Standing desks are often perceived as a prevention or a cure for example, back pain. But again, actually alternating between sitting, standing, and moving is more effective. Encouraging frequent posture changes and integrating movement into daily routines yields better outcomes. So if you want to use it because it feels good to you, that's fine. But try to combine it with other ways of doing your work. Certainly, if you do repetitive work for a longer time. The third myth concerns the intensity and duration of exercise. Many persons still believe that exercise must be intense or long-lasting to become beneficial. And although we indeed see a dose-response relationship in literature, which means that being more physically active actually means that you get more benefits, short and frequent bouts of movement or brief activity breaks, such as walking during phone calls, squatting while brushing your teeth, taking the stairs instead of taking an elevator, can contribute to overall health and pain management. Moreover, if you do this 2 to 3 minutes every hour, at the end of the day, these minutes can stack up quite easily. So the fourth myth is that pain related to movement or posture is an indicator of damage. Patients often fear that pain associated with movement signifies tissue damage. However, pain can occur in the absence of structural harm. Encouraging gradual movement, building confidence, and focusing on function rather than pain levels are crucial for effective pain management. The fifth and last myth for today is the role of stretching. Stretching alone is not the most effective way to manage pain, and this statement can actually be applied to all very isolated exercise modalities. A combination of, for example, strength training, aerobic activity, and flexibility exercises is recommended. Individuals should engage in a well-rounded physical activity regimen, tailored, of course, to their own needs. To end, aside from these myths, we are also discussing the construction of more practical tips to promote activity at work, which we want to combine into this kind of an easy leaflet for you to read. But I suggest that we'll update you on that later, as this is still a work in progress. And I'm sure that you will also get some specific tips already from our colleagues from Work Physiotherapy later on in this webinar already. So with that, I'm at the end of my talk. Thank you for attending this part of the webinar. For further information on resources and engagement opportunities, please visit the EFIC website or reach out via the provided contact details, and I'll give the word back to Nathan and the next speaker. Thank you.
Fantastic, Jonas. Thank you so much for that. Very, very interesting and so in-depth. I love the myth-busting aspect of that, and we can all kind of resonate with those messages in our attempts to try and address those myths. And I think that's really important. So thank you so much for that. Just a reminder before we move on to Miguel, if you have any questions, please pop them into the question and answer function, which is at the bottom of your screen. See a couple of people popping up their hands. I wish we were able to do that with so many attendees. If you do have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A and we will see them. And if for Jonas, he might have an opportunity to answer that whilst Miguel is presenting, or we can discuss it at the end of the presentation as well. So please pop your questions. Again, you can do that anonymously if you wish as well. Okay. Now we're going to hand over to Miguel. Miguel, welcome. Thank you so much. It's great to see you, and thank you so much for joining us. I hand it over to you.
Mm -hmm. Thank you very much, Nathan, and thank you very much, Jonas, for your great presentation. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Miguel Pérez Navarro. and I'm a physiotherapist working as communication and operations officer in the Europe region of World Physiotherapy. During my presentation, I will talk about move at work and the role of physiotherapy. These are the points I'm going to cover during my presentation. Let's go. What's the Europe region of World Physiotherapy? Founded in 1951, World Physiotherapy operates as a non-profit organization. It represents more than 600,000 physiotherapists worldwide through its 128 member organizations. World Physiotherapy has 5 regions, each composed of member organizations in that geographical area. The Europe region is a non-profit, non-governmental organization that represents the physiotherapy profession at European level. Founded in 1998, it has a membership of 58 physiotherapy associations, one from each of the European countries, representing approximately 200,000 physiotherapists in Europe. This makes the Europe region the largest region of world physiotherapy. To summarize briefly how the Europe region works, every 2 years the general meeting of the region is held. Representatives of its member organizations meet to approve budgets, document produced or updated during the last 2 years, discuss current issues in European physiotherapy, and vote for half of the members of the executive committee. After the general meeting, the executive committee meets to select the physiotherapists who will be part of the working groups for the next 2 years from the nominations sent by the member organizations. Currently, the Euro region has 3 permanent working groups, advocacy and EU, education and research and professional practice, 2 thematic working groups, mental health and cancer, and 1 satellite working group on musculoskeletal disorders, MSDs. These working groups will, over the next 2 years, be responsible for developing documents and resources. These are used by the Europe region and by member organizations to advocate for the profession, represent the Europe region attending and participating in events and conferences as regulated by the Executive Committee of the Europe region, arrange webinars to different target groups that are afterwards uploaded to the Europe region YouTube channel. They collaborate with EU institutions and collaborate with stakeholders and other healthcare associations. As I said earlier in the brief description of how the Euro region works, the MSD's working group is currently a satellite working group. However, in the previous term, it was one of the thematic working groups, and here I wanted to make an appointment to its components, to its members, as it is the team that was working on the materials I'm going to talk about next. As the Europe region of World Physiotherapy has been a partner of the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work, also known as EUOSA, we have been a partner of the EUOSA Healthy Workplaces campaign for the last 2 editions. The working group, the MSD's working group, focused its projects on the thematic topic of the campaign, of its campaign. This is why during the 2 years, the MSD's working group planned and launched the Move at Work social media campaign and produced a position paper on the role of physiotherapy in MSDs in the age of remote working and an e-booklet with an illustrated edition on managing MSDs at work. All these materials are accessible via the link and the QR code you can see on the screen. I will also share with you in the chat the link to the direct link to these documents, these 2 documents. Regarding the role of physiotherapy in MSDs or mental health problems, it is important in preventing, treating, and managing them. I wanted to highlight some of the points from the conclusion part of the position paper mentioned in the previous slide. So physiotherapy provides evidence-based intervention based on education and exercise with effective coping mechanisms to handle workload. It also provides cost-effective intervention for the most commonly reported work-related MSDs as neck pain or or carpal tunnel syndrome. Physiotherapists identify risk factors associated with delayed return to work or absenteeism. Physiotherapists encourage good health behaviors and awareness and enable employees to stay in work while managing their health problems. Although the production of the document was important in terms of highlighting the role of physiotherapy through scientific evidence, we decided to look for a way to get this message across to workers and also to companies and employers. That is why in March last year, we launched the Move at Work campaign, where during 1 year, every Monday, we published a tip on our social networks to create habits in sedentary jobs that help prevent the onset of physical and mental health problems. These publications had a text describing the tip of the week and multimedia content to support that tip and reinforce it visually. This multimedia content could be either an image or a short video provided by our Latvian member organization or other materials we had available on the website. As we wanted the campaign messages to reach as many people as possible, we invited our member organizations and other associations and companies to join the campaign. In the end, 14 member organizations and 7 external institutions joined, and they were receiving every month a calendar with the weekly tips and multimedia content to be published in order to translate the text and schedule the post. As a bonus, our member organizations also received permission to edit the images, to include their logo, and also to translate the text of the images as well. As a benefit of joining the campaign, our member organization in Bosnia and Herzegovina, for example, gave a talk on the importance of physical activity to an IT company. This campaign also caught the attention of our colleagues from EFIC, with whom we have a great relationship due to the obvious synergies that exist between both associations and which allow us to make numerous collaborations like as this one. It turned out that the Move at Work campaign had many things in common with the On the Move campaign, so we decided to produce 4 publications combining both campaigns. Although the campaign lasted a year and ended last March, we still want the messages to be shared to continue reaching as many people as possible who might be interested. That's why we encourage people to get involved in 2 ways. You can contact me by email following the specifications that you can see in the screen to receive the content for the entire year and manage it as best suits your communication plan. Or you can go directly to our website to find all the campaign content and share whether you like. I didn't want to end my presentation without thanking Gabriel Murphy and Elina Bergmain, who planned this campaign with the help of the rest of the working group members, and Carol Disi, an Irish physiotherapist who you will probably recognize from having seen her during the previous slides, as she voluntarily helped creating both the tips and the multimedia content of the campaign. And well, this was all for me. It was a short presentation, but just to make you know more about the Move at Work. thank you very much for your attention. You have my email here in case you also want to contact me for any matter, and the social media and the social networks of the Europe Region of World Physiotherapy. So you can follow them if you want to be updated on what we do. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miguel. Very, very helpful. I appreciate that. And if Miguel or Jonas, do you have any links that you might find useful for the attendees, please post those into the chat. We'll get those to attendees as well. Quick reminder, again, I always do this, is if you have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A function. That's the best place for us to see them. And it's very, very easy for us to go through those questions. I see that there's a couple of raised hands. We appreciate that. However, it's a little bit more difficult in this format for us to go directly to attendees. So please just write a brief kind of overview of the questions in the Q&A and we will get to them straight away. Fantastic stuff. Thank you so much for your presentations. Let's go through a bit of a discussion. I want to hear a little bit more. Julia has also posted a question in and says, do you have insights on the benefit of treadmills for desks? I think we all have opinions on how there's different ways of keeping people physically active during those sedentary times. And I think personally, and of course, Jonas, we want to hear your opinion, and Miguel as well. Personally, there are some influences of marketing here and social media influence on these types of things. But Jonas, perhaps you can enlighten us all. What's your opinions or your insights on the benefits of treadmills for desks?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a very, very relevant question. Thank you, Julia, for the question. I'm a physiotherapist too, so these are typically questions that we receive a lot from patients, and it's important to have an idea of how we communicate with them, or how we educate them on the importance or non-importance of such material that they can use. I think that treadmills, well, they can be a step up from a normal standing desk already, because you allow the possibility to not only stand but also have the possibility to walk, which is of course already a variability of movement. But still, I prefer to give the education to patients that it could be added value to have some movement breaks that are not related to their desk and doing something totally different than what they are doing while working, which might be more of a added value to me than using the treadmill, which has a high cost if you have to buy it, if you have to put it in your work environment, which is sometimes a bit difficult. So it has some advantages, certainly when you look at it from the standpoint from going from a standing desk to a treadmill, but it might be quite costly to achieve the same as you can with some movement breaks that we have shown during these presentations.
I'd agree, and I think what kind of comes to mind there is the narrative that's provided around the intervention of using a treadmill during sedentary times. It's less about the fact that you need to be walking, perhaps hitting your 10,000 steps during one treadmill session. It's more about emphasizing that using a treadmill as a tool to increase your movement, which is where the evidence base sits. And I think perhaps when treadmills are being used in that situation, maybe that's where the disconnect is that you have the treadmill and the encouragement to walk whilst doing your meetings or whatever it might be. But what isn't delivered at that point is more information about the evidence base and why you're using a treadmill. In this case, it would be to move more, to find the next best sort of position, and keep moving whilst we're usually sedentary. Miguel, any thoughts on treadmills?
Yeah, I agree with Jonas. Obviously, as if you have a treadmill in the office or at your apartment, it's great to use it not only during work, even if you are at home and you want to do some exercise, it's also okay. But there are many other. If you need to buy it, you have many other options that you don't need to spend money. For example, you can go to your workplace by walking, and or you can stop one bus stop before your place. So you have many other options that you don't need to spend money on it.
And it seems to be a regular narrative when we're talking about how we can influence what happens in companies and day-to-day work to be able to help people with pain and avoid them developing pain. And always seems to come into the discussion is cost effectiveness. You know, it always seems to be money and how much is it going to cost these companies to help people and obviously help themselves when it comes to productivity. And it kind of brings me to a question that I had, and of course we will come to the questions in the Q&A. Please keep them coming. Is that one of the main challenges for these types of initiatives when trying to work with companies, is that we're attempting to address a preventative need. We're trying to prevent something that, in the case of developing pain, that's not yet visible, but it requires a lot of resources and a lot of money, a lot of time for companies to help people in the workforce. You know, and it's not yet present. It's something that they don't see. So in the eyes of the employer, it might not ever develop into pain. So is that one of the difficulties, is of trying to convince companies to spearhead resources to avoid something that they might not see might happen, but when it does, it's hugely impactful? That must be quite difficult, right? Jonas, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think you already said it. It's very difficult always to get preventive measures in, because you don't see the effects right away, or you don't see the difference with not doing it, because it's of course not possible. But I think it's just up to us to educate on all the advantages and all the literature that we see, and these kind of global campaigns that we have now, and the campaigns in Europe that we can do with the On the Move task force and all the other campaigns that we have. I think they support in the broad audience being more aware of what it can do when you have pain, but also when you don't have pain yet, how it can support you. And I think that already puts more emphasis on employees already to think about that, and to if they get these questions from their workers, I think it would possibly help in also them engaging more with their workforce and trying to set up these supportive matters and being more active and doing stuff preventively. I think we see it the last 5 to 10 years a bit more, but still prevention is something difficult. You said it yourself, Nathan.
Miguel.
Yeah, as you said, I think we need to adapt our vocabulary to engage like the companies, to let them know how prevention, how important is prevention, and it's mostly through numbers. If you show the money they can save by having their workers with a good prevention plan. It's regarding the hours they spend for absenteeism, or the time they need to spend for their turn to work. They can notice. It's something we try to showcase in the position paper we created. We talk about the cost effectiveness of physiotherapy. We have examples from the Australian Physiotherapy Association and the American Physical Therapy Associations that reflects the money the country was saving in a specific MSDs, as back pain, tennis elbow, chronic neck pain, that are one of the most common MSDs that we can have at work. So yeah, it's the best way is to show it through numbers, because if you are just saying that your employees will be like healthier and happier and they will perform better, they will not do nothing about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe to add to that, I also think that it's important that work givers, or that they know that the message that we are giving today is also that it is quite low risk for a work giver to think about these things, not buying treadmills, but just having activity breaks and doing this
So,
kind of things. Initiatives like snacktivity and doing 1-minute breaks of being active, that is not something that changes up your workforce in a totally different way. So I think it's quite low risk to them. But if we educate on the advantages that it can give, then they should, I think they should be positive about it too.
Trying to translate that positivity in a language that they understand, or a language that they are looking to try and understand, with regards to numbers being the biggest one. Miguel, great point there, that yes, your workforce might be feeling better, it might be better looked after, but if the numbers aren't quite matching up, then that can be quite a challenge for some organizations, regardless of their intentions. You know, if they have positive intentions, it might still be quite difficult for them. Dragos has a question. Hopefully I've pronounced your name correctly there. He mentions a little bit about, you mentioned there, how do the campaigns kind of translate, and how can we use these campaigns? And he says, can we impose these rules on employers across the EU so that we can implement them on a large scale? What's kind of the next stage, I guess? How can we use these resources to really make a change for employers across the EU? I shall leave that open to anybody who might want to. It's a great question. It's a fantastic question.
I mean, I think it's difficult to impose these tips, these rules across the EU. What we can do is just to collect the evidence that supports these facts, and try to disseminate this information through our channels. We do it, as I mentioned, the content, the resources we create are for their region and also for our member organizations, so they can go to their national institutions, and they have something to support the importance of physiotherapy in this topic. But yes, it's something difficult, but we cannot do a great impact regarding the law in the EU.
Mm-hmm. I think it probably reiterated it as our responsibility, and within our scope of what we understand and our expertise, is that we know the evidence, we understand it pretty well. It's about how can we work with ourselves and other people to translate that into, as you mentioned, a language that they understand, that's influential to not only organizers themselves, but also politicians, to influence policy. Those are the kind of the things that we need to do. But translating that in a way that's understandable, for example, the myths, I think, is a really good, easy, quick way of understanding some of the concepts which are pretty well misunderstood, that they could do with addressing, is taking that evidence and providing it in a palatable way to these, for them to ultimately make the decision. But we need to do that in a convincing way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's our function, and we can support with giving the education to set up these national and international sensibilization campaigns. But of course, doing something really regulatory is difficult in this way. So I think if we keep on spreading the message, then policymakers should take that up and be sure to include that in in all the things that they do normally, or that they set up. So that is their function, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And also,
go for it.
Also, this kind of collaborations helps a lot to give visibility to all the work we do. If we collaborate between the health care associations and stakeholders, we will be more powerful.
Absolutely, that's a great way of doing that. And Dragos mentions briefly there that we can connect it to human rights. I assume, you know, the human right that everyone has or should have access to be able to manage their pain. I think that sits in very, very well with that. Thank you so much for the questions. We have another one from an anonymous attendee. It says, suggestions for LMIC to increase activity throughout the day for new parents who are working via a hybrid model? I guess what would the suggestions be for those, for new parents who are working via a hybrid model? It's an interesting question. Any advice? I think this is probably, some of the suggestions probably translate very, very simply into this, but it's more to do with the interpersonal assessment of new parents who are working via a hybrid model. Perhaps the focus is on the impact that working on a hybrid model has on new parents and individuals, I guess, generally, is still to follow the advice, looking at the myths that you've created and the resources that you've created to help people become more physically active and really understand the importance of that during what we all do in sedentary, and the sedentary components of hybrid working, I guess, is where that kind of sits significantly. Miguel, do you have any additional comments to that one?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to do a specific suggestion for specific cases. That's why we always. I think that's the most beautiful part of physiotherapy, because physiotherapists, we don't treat everyone with the same treatment. I mean, we need to take into account all the context, the familiar context, work context. It's more an holistic treatment, so it's difficult to do any suggestion. My suggestion is to really go to a specialist, go to a physiotherapist that can help you with your specific problem, and it will be the best. You will get the best results for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with Miguel. I think it's always very context specific, so it's very difficult to say, well, in this situation you should do this. But I think everyone just has to take small steps and try to build it up and see that it is working in your environment as well as your working environment, as your private environment. And then try to build it up, and that's the way how small steps become bigger steps, and then you can see if it works, and if it doesn't give any more problems with your pain or with all the context that you have. So and that is actually what healthcare providers could help you with. Of course, physiotherapists, but also other healthcare providers. That's also what we try to say in our recommendation paper or in our position paper, that maybe often we think it's only physiotherapists that work with getting people more active, but we see that actually almost all healthcare providers could support the idea of becoming more active and doing these small things that in the end can create long-lasting results. So if we can educate healthcare providers on that and get that to patients, I think we could support doing those small steps even more, and that's also applicable to low moderate income countries. So
I think one of the important steps is recognizing that there needs to be some attention directed towards that. So if that's an individual, of course anonymous here, but if that's an individual who is looking to increase their physical activity and finding ways to do that, the first important step that they've taken is the fact that they've recognized that that is an opportunity that they need to seek out. And of course the resources provided both by Ethics on the Move campaign and the campaign from European World region of World Physiotherapy can really help deliver some more information that you can take to a healthcare professional to seek out some future information. So I think that's pretty good advice. Another question here from anonymous attendee. It says, what is the recommended amount of time for an adult should be standing instead of sitting, moving throughout the day, exercise per day, and for how many hours should one avoid sitting still? I think the best way to perhaps answer this question is, what advice would you give to healthcare professionals in providing evidence or providing discussions with their patients about these times? I think as healthcare professionals, they would find it very, very easy. I guess it would be good to say to patients, 4 hours is too much, or, half an hour is too little. I can kind of understand it's not as simple as that, but do you have any tips for getting this message across for healthcare professionals and their patients?
Yeah, well, regarding the recommended amount of time one adult should exercise per day, if we follow the guidelines of the World Health Organization, it should be in 1 hour per day during the week. But as Jonas was mentioned, every exercise, every movement counts. So is if obviously if you are a sedentary person that wants to start to build to build new habits, it's going to be really difficult that you really follow during a long time. If you start doing 60 minutes of exercise, depending also of the intensity, but it depends on the on each person, and the most important thing is to increase this amount of exercise per day progressively.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with what Miguel said. I think there are two different things. You have the WHO guidelines that are very specific also for different populations. And of course, you have the main guideline of 150 minutes a week and then doing twice strength training a week. But for different other populations, for example, pregnant women, you have these specific guidelines. So these are available, but it's just this kind of a guide to have an idea of this is helping your health. Every step counts. And with regards to standing instead of sitting, I think it's a bit less clear if we should have a cutoff. Again, variability is key, so that is the important tip to give you. Try to change it up during the day more than fixating on only 1 hour or only 2 hours or only 3 hours. I think that depends a lot on who you are and what you are doing and how you can change it with doing activities in between.
Yeah, and I think that last point is probably the key there. It's about, or my advice, and Jonas and Miguel, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's perhaps about behavior change and assessing patients' normal working patterns, figuring out what they do day to day, and then looking at how you can integrate those small changes into their workday that becomes almost natural for them. And as you mentioned, every sort of step counts towards that. So making those small changes is probably much more valuable than saying 6 hours is too much or too little. And of course, the resources that have been shared today would really support clinicians in doing that.
Sure.
Another question is, are you aware of any, and this is a great question, are you aware of any studies that compare office work and work from home in terms of incidence of chronic pain? Work from home allows people to work even longer hours. And I guess, as mentioned here from Anonymous, with poor ergonomic setups, that could probably emphasize the impact or the potential impact of pain in this case. So where are we sitting within the research in terms of office work versus work from home in terms of chronic pain incidents? Another fantastic question.
Yes,
I would probably, start by saying that maybe we're in the initial stages, the early stages, given that COVID, produced a huge swing in work from home. Only sort of 5 or 6 years ago. It feels like, sort of yesterday, but perhaps it takes a bit of time for this research to come through. So I would probably initially say that we're in the early stages, but it will certainly be interesting to see what this research kind of shows, right?
Yeah, I mean, teleworking is something relatively new for all of us. It's a new way of working that appeared. Well, it had its boom after COVID or during COVID, and the research is not that complete right now. I don't have any resource localized, but I'm looking at the references we have at the position paper, but there are many. I cannot find any specific resource on it. I don't know if Jonas has something about.
Well, I know of a couple studies that have been looking into differences between working at home and working at the office, and which difference that makes. But I think up until now, these results are not conclusive. So I think it would be a bit difficult for me to really state, well, this is what we know and what we should do for the rest of doing this work at home. So again, we are returning to the tips that we have already given. I think even if you work in the office or if you work at home, variability in your activities will be key, and you can have a normal setup without a standing desk or without a treadmill, which works good, which does not give you any complaints if you are in a context where you can be active in between whatever you do, when there are other factors such as stress and sleep that do not have their impact on what you do. So for now, it's still waiting for more resources or more research that shows clear differences, and I'm not sure that we will actually see it, because also in the work office, it could be that you have this kind of a setup that supports you or doesn't support you, and then it's very difficult to make those rigid changes between doing work at home and doing work at the office. So I'm not sure, but we will see in the next years if there is more research to come stating something specifically on that.
And I think the experimental design for that one might be quite intricate and quite complex for us to get some real outcomes. And Giraldi mentions there, and I think we all might agree with kind of assuming that this might be the case, but working from home allows for more movement variations. People tend to be up and about a little bit more when they're working from home. Physical activity breaks, a bit more flexibility. But again, as Jonas mentions there, it's quite complex. And this is obviously person dependent, job dependent, organization dependent, discipline dependent. So I think there's so many variables in there that might make it quite difficult for us to really conclude exactly the differences between working from home and in the office for pain or the development or management of pain.
I understand the comment, but I also think that for a lot of people working at home, it's more difficult to make the cutoff between working and not working, which means that you often see that people are working more or doing more hours, which then also can have an impact on pain and not being active aside from the work. So again, it's very complex to see that as one and the other. So
yeah, absolutely. We do have one question. I'm just conscious of time. I think this would actually sit as a very, very good question for us to kind of end the webinar on. And Zara mentions that as someone in physiotherapy research, really interested in understanding where the field is heading. So based on the current evidence, what do you see as the most important research gaps in preventing pain in sedentary workplaces, and perhaps reflect upon the initiatives that you have, the campaigns that you've both been heavily involved with? Are there any specific areas that you think require a bit more attention that potentially early career researchers could dive into? Where's the field going?
So I'm talking from our experience while we were doing the Move at Work social media campaign, because obviously we wanted the post to be in line with the evidence. So we had some problems finding evidence regarding desk exercises. We were not finding good evidence in specific desk exercises. Yeah, that's the main problem we found regarding evidence in these tips.
We do a lot of research on exercise therapy protocols and everything related to being physically active, and I think what we see there a lot in research at the moment is a lack of transparency in the research protocols being published, which makes it very difficult, again, because we were discussing this now, to make these clear differentiations between what works and what doesn't work. And again, we see that the variability that it is important. But if we really want to talk about exercise modalities and exercise characteristics, then often even with systematic reviews or meta-analysis, they do not give us the information of all the different designs that were used. So I think it's more important to be sure that in the following years that we have qualitative research and that we do not keep on publishing research where we do almost the same things, but just not be transparent in how we do them. So I think that's more important than looking for the holy grail and thinking that we will find this one thing that helps us and that prevents all the chronic pain that we have seen up until now. So I think that's more important for the next year. Just be rigorous in what you set up and be transparent in how you set it up, so that we can evaluate it if we look at different studies from each other.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's kind of emphasized by making sure that we have the key stakeholders involved in that research, is involving organizations at some point in the pathway, because they are the ones that we are looking to try and influence to increase the amount that they are sort of allow their employees to participate in physical activity for the benefit of the workforce and for the benefit of the patients, right? For the individuals. Okay, fantastic, great stuff. I'm aware of time. Thank you so much. That essentially takes us to the end of the session today. Thank you so much for everyone for taking time to collaborate on such an interesting webinar. Jonas, Miguel, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you to everybody who posted questions in the Q&A. Very, very good and very interesting questions. Thank you for that. As I mentioned before, this webinar is recorded, so you can access this via the EFIC Academy platform, YouTube channel, and also the Europe region of World Physiotherapy YouTube channel. Please go and check that out. Don't forget to share this online on social media as well, so we can get this really interesting discussion as far and wide as possible. Check out the resources that have been shared and share those as well. Thank you so much for the questions and interaction. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I shall see you all on the next webinar. Thank you so much for your time today, guys. Take care.
Thank you very much.